Hello friends, thanks for joining me in the Cloud Pedagogy AWS Developers course. In the previous lesson, we understand CodeCommit and its benefits, understanding the pricing structure, and now let's just get our high-level understanding of how to work with CodeCommit and dig a little bit deeper inside with our student directory application development team. So let's meet our development team, Resh, Kins and Rohi, and we will be working with the team throughout the course. So we are going to use CodeCommit as our central repository, and then our dev team can clone this repository, essentially pull it down and make their own version of this repository locally. And then they can work independently, commit changes they make, push it back up to the main repository, and then other team members can get the latest version of the repository. Same process again, pull it down locally and work on that independently. But just for the demonstration purposes, imagine that we have created a student directory repository called student app in the CodeCommit. And right here, our central repository, we have code in that repository and it is at version 1. And then we have our developers, Resh, Kins and Rohi are sitting at their local machines. But how do these developers start working with CodeCommit? So let's say Resh has joined in the team newly and comes into the work on Monday morning and she wants to begin working. She has tasks and has assignments and she wants to begin working with student app repository. So what Resh will do is a process called cloning. Clone is primarily used to point to an existing repo and make a clone or a copy of that repo at a new directory at maybe another location. So Resh can clone that repository and create her own local repository, and this is going to allow her to work on this repository independently without affecting our central repository. Let's say that Resh's task is a feature change. Having cloned the central repository, Resh can work on that feature change independently, and when she is completed, she can perform a commit. The commit is used to save your changes within the local repository. Now the thing to understand with these commits, remember this commit remains local. So Resh is making changes to the code and she is doing commits. But it remains local until she does a push to the main repository. And that's very important to understand. So the code has changed. Now we have a version 2. Now we just don't want to throw this version 2 over the fence and put it into the production, right? There is going to be some testing done here, and this is where QA comes into play in real time. Remember our DevOps diagram with the dev and ops and QA, and remember our small releases, and we want to automate everything. So we want to do small changes and we want to test those changes, and ultimately if everything goes well with the testing, we then perform a push. Push is used to upload local repository changes to a central repository. Pushing is how you transfer commits from your local repository to remote or central repository. Notice when we do the push that our version becomes version 2 in the central repository. Well, that's great, but now the rest of our team needs to get in sync with what's going on at the central repository, right? Let's say the other developer Kins come into work on Tuesday. And let's say Kins has already cloned the repository. She already has version 1 down here at her local repository. But there is now a version 2. So what Kins needs to do is issue a pull command. Pull is used to fetch and download content from a central repository and immediately update the local repository to match that content. And with pulls, it is important for our team to do this periodically, maybe beginning of the day or end of the day. Notice that our version locally changed to version 2. Now remember, with version control, if there are any problems, we can roll it back to version 1. Let's say that everything went well. We are sitting here at version 2. Everybody is up to date and the process just repeats itself. Ideally, we have a code pipeline that is automated. When our developers commit changes, our automation kicks in, our test team is notified, testing is performed, our commits are pushed to the central repository, and the process just repeats itself. and we are working efficiently, we are working in an agile manner. So just some key takeaways from this whole process. Imagine that a new developer, for example Rohi, has joined into the team. The first thing she has to do is clone that repository. There are other considerations. We will talk about merging conflicts in an upcoming lessons, where let's say Resh and Kins could be working on the same file and potentially even working on the same lines of the code. So there could be some conflicts. So we will talk about that, how that's resolved. Alright, we understand that CodeCommit from a high level and its benefits, and also understood that CodeCommit is not free, but it's pretty cheap unless you're running a large team on CodeCommit. The cost is pretty negligible, you can say. And then we had a high level understanding on how to work with CodeCommit using clones and pushes and pulls and even commits. In the next few sessions, we are going to demonstrate how easy it is to start with AWS CodeCommit practically in AWS Management Console. I really appreciate your interest in this session, and I'm excited to see you again. Until then, have fun with learning.